Unlike CMMS and vendor marketplaces, 86 Repairs doesn't profit from service companies and has only comprehensive, unbiased market insights in the industry. Designed to help operators reduce costs, minimize equipment downtime, and work with the best service companies, 86 Repairs ensures staff can stay focused on what matters, serving their guests. Learn more at 86repairs.com.
Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision-makers. This week, I'm talking with Jeni's Splendid Ice Cream CEO, Stacy Peterson, and Director of Innovation, Beth Stallings. As I'm sure you know, Jeni's has made a name for itself with its incredibly creative and indulgent ice cream flavors, including a seasonal rotation that gives the company a chance to take some big swings with its flavor profiles. Jeni's this week is launching its holiday collection with 5 new flavors, and I had the pleasure of joining Stacy and Beth in person at a scoop shop here in Columbus, Ohio, to sample those flavors and to discuss Jeni's approach to R&D. This conversation dovetails nicely with my conversation from last week with Sweetgreen co-founder Nick Jammett. As similar to Sweetgreen, Jeni's is deeply invested in the story that its menu is telling customers, and it really leans into that for its marketing strategy. In this interview, you will learn more about why seasonal menu innovation is a baked-in marketing strategy, why timing is everything with menu R&D, and why you should think both big and small with your new product development. By the way, if you want a glimpse at these flavors and you want to hear more from Beth about the complex ingredients in each flavor, go subscribe to NRN's Instagram account at Nation's Restaurant News, as we'll be releasing some video next week of our ice cream sampling adventure. Jumping now into my interview with Jeni's Stacy Peterson and Beth Stallings. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview, as I will share my 4 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, Stacy Peterson, Beth Stallings, thanks so much for sitting down with me inside a Jeni's here in Columbus, Ohio.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. All right, so we're talking about menu development at Jeni's, which is obviously one of your core differentiators. Stacy, you and I have talked about this before. Beth, you have a lot of oversight over the menu development here, so glad to have you part of this conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit about the new holiday flavors that you guys are getting ready to roll out. But let's start just more broadly. How is, Stacy, from your perspective as CEO, how do you lean into flavor development as part of the, main Jeni's differentiator, as I said?
Yeah, I love that question because I'd really like to answer on perspective of our internal team as well as what it means to our customers. Internally, we are a creative-led company, and we really mean it, right? Flavor development and innovation is the fuel that runs the engine that is our company. And we do a lot of even internal campaigning to get our teams excited about the flavors that we're introducing. Mm-hmm. Externally, I think it is absolutely what we stand for. Our customers expect us to innovate on flavor. We love to create flavors that have never been made before, as much as we love to put our spin fresh and exciting on classic flavors. But what we aspire to is to connect emotionally with flavor and to really make flavors that people want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. You said this thing before, and you've said this before when you and I spoke, Stacy, but this idea of the story behind the flavors. We were just talking about that before we started because, Beth, you started as a journalist, so very appropriate that leads you into flavor development because of the story of it. Tell me how you got into the R&D process for Jeni's, going from being somebody who was a journalist.
Well, I feel like I have Stacy to thank for that, for putting the trust in me for this job. So I've stepped into innovation a little over a year ago. So I've been at Jeni's coming up on 9 years. So I started on the storytelling side as a copywriter, and I joke that I spent most of my days just like bothering Jeni and like stealing every free moment she had to bring me along on every journey for every flavor. And ones that we were doing then in the future, and even ones that we'd made before, because I felt like to tell the best story, I had to understand where we've been.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time talking about flavor, getting deep, understanding how we make ice creams like nobody else, where we get ingredients from, how we think about flavor. And that's something that I think is really unique to us in terms of just how we break down the way we think about flavor, and it's the creativity, storytelling, how we want to make someone feel, where it's going to transport you. I think that's the wonderful thing. One of the reasons I've gravitated toward just food in general, like most of my career has been in food writing or most actually really in ice cream at this point now, is that food is transportive. It's so closely tied to memory. And the beautiful thing about ice cream is that the way that you consume it, the way that it melts, like in your mouth, honestly, we talk a lot about retronasal, and like it's the thing of like scent is tied to memory. It can't actually take you somewhere if you nail the flavors. So
Yeah. Jeni Britton, of course, being the founder, I mean, she was the one who initially was doing the flavor development, right? How much do you still draw? Because she's stepped back as CEO, but still involved, I imagine, with the brand. How much do you guys still look to her for assistance in flavor development?
She's still an owner, and I talk to her quite a bit. I just talked to her about our holiday flavors the other day. And she and I meet regularly, but she's not as active in a day job. She's moved on to starting her next company. So she's a little bit of a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And she's really passionate about gut health. And she's the founder and CEO of a company called Flora that she's developing right now.
Very cool. Entrepreneurs, they can't help but create things,
That's right.
right? So let's talk about development process, because when you guys are, obviously you have a seasonal rotation of flavors. You have some regulars that are on the menu year round, right? So when you're developing a new flavor, certainly for seasonal flavors, you have some common things that you pull from. And I imagine when we talk about the holiday flavors, there are some holiday flavors that you look to. But what's the process? What's the story that you want to tell in flavor development, and how does that work to get into flavor?
Yeah, we usually try to start with an inspiration. And that inspiration is typically at a collection or a theme level. And it can be as literal as flavors of a season or the harvest of that season. It can be as mystical as flavors from another galaxy. It can be as nostalgic as flavors from a certain time and place. It can be a color, a scent, a song. It can literally be anything. We don't put any restrictions around where we take our inspiration from. But once we have the collection or overall theme idea, we then start, and Beth's team really starts ideating on paper. And we'll typically, what do you say, about 30 flavor ideas that ladder up to that theme on paper. So these would be the flavor name and a short description of the flavor. And we spend quite a bit of time just thinking through possibilities that would connect to that theme. From there, we have to make some tough choices a couple of times in this process. And then in this case, we pick about 10 that go into the test kitchen that we actually start creating in the test kitchen. And any one flavor in the test kitchen could go from 4 to 40 iterations, depending on the complexity, depending on the nuance of flavor that we're trying to create. It's pretty amazing. You know, most ice cream flavors have quite a few ingredients in it. But when you throw that all together and you throw it in with cream, sometimes one flavor pops too much. Sometimes another flavor is drowned out, right? So getting the right nuance and layering of flavor does take some iteration.
Yep.
This is really the hard part, though, as we go from 10 flavors in the test kitchen to having to pick which 3 to 5 will live on and reach production. That's always says it's like choosing for children. And so we pick 3 to 5 that we believe are right for the collection, and then that's passed from benchtop sample to our R&D team and quality team, and they take those recipes and they scale them up for larger scale production, and they oversee the initial production run. It takes us 9 to 12 months to create a flavor.
That's incredible. So you were thinking about, so as we get into the holiday flavors here in the next few weeks, you were thinking about this a year ago, last holiday? Okay. And were there ideas left over from the last holidays that you go back to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Still thinking about them.
Still thinking about
Yeah. I always joke with the team that they just get put on the shelf.
Yeah.
I was like, we're really just building the arsenal. So if something doesn't launch, like for this holiday, it doesn't mean that it's dead and gone. It just means that, like, okay, it just wasn't the time. It wasn't the right time or the right moment for that flavor. But I'm still thinking there's some that they're still at the back of my brain and just waiting for the right moment.
Yeah.
Right now, we're finalizing summer 2025.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you have to think about that because as you scale, right, as you guys look to supply chain and things like that, you have to make sure you can source these things. And to that point too, I mean, you were talking about, Stacy, how, you can really go all out there to find these flavors, but in the back of your mind, you must be thinking about, can we source this ingredient even? How much does that play a role in flavor development?
It's hand in hand when we're talking about that long list. Stacey was referencing that, we'll have the 30 ideas and then we go through them with our R&D team and our sourcing team at the same time. We talk about how difficult it might be to find an ingredient, what the lead times are. We have some flavors that we've had in development. I think there's one that we are still working on, and we're creating an entire supply chain around this. Wow. So it was an idea that we wanted to launch 2 years ago, but the reality was we just knew it was going to take time to do that. So every collection, we sort of look at that. We're like, okay, what's the difficulty level? What do we think we can get our hands on now? What do we think we might not be able to get our hands on for a while? So it helps us sort of prioritize and figure out what we can work on and what we should maybe look at that goes into next summer.
Right.
And there's a lot of planning when you're reserving crops. For example, our goat cheese with cherries, we have to contract out the amount of goats that are going to have babies that produce our goat cheese. So, it does. We do end up waiting on, supply chain in some cases, but they're the right cases to work with partners that are important to us.
You probably never thought in your career you'd care so much about goat markets, right?
Really, truly.
But here you are. Yeah, and I think too from the consumer palate, right? Like being, flavors that are like, you guys have flavors that I never even knew could work in ice cream. Do you just have to trust that the consumer will discover it and like it, like you liked it, or do you have to do any kind of education to help them understand that?
I think that depends. Where we take customer feedback into account and we're really good at is we consider, most of our innovation goes into our shops, right? We produce about 15 to 20 new flavors for our shops every year. And we have this great opportunity to be able to talk across the counter to our customers. I mean, get direct feedback from them, how they're experiencing the flavor, what they like, what they don't like. And we get the, both qualitative and quantitative data because we see what sells. And so we call that our incubation program. And out of those 15 to 20 flavors, we strive to have 4 that can get promoted into CPG. So meaning to be put on a grocery store freezer aisle, right? And so we want to make sure the grocery store freezer aisle doesn't have the opportunity to explain a flavor to a customer, right? You've got to go on to the name of the flavor, the description, the packaging. And so we want to make sure those are proven winners. The other consideration is that we have to produce those flavors at such a higher number. It's very costly for us. So we want to make sure that a flavor has already proven itself. We know it's a winner before we promote it in there. Otherwise, we're starting to use customer feedback a little bit more in some of the decision-making process. So when we have to choose between our children in the test kitchen, and sometimes that's a really hard choice, we may do a survey to understand a customer's reaction to one flavor versus the other, or one name versus another name, or understand purchase intent. And that can help inform how we think about it. But that's a pretty new muscle that we're building. A lot of it, when you're doing something completely new, you do have to use your gut. So it's really a balance.
Because it makes me think of, for example, how much social media drives conversation around, trends and stuff. So one that I've talked about a lot recently is the spicy trend, which I find kind of silly because, look, the combination of sweet and spicy has been around forever, but to give it that name made it a TikTok sensation, right? So suddenly a lot of companies are developing products that are spicy. Mm-hmm. With a 9 to 12 month development time frame, you guys can't afford to jump on that trend because by the time you put it to market, it's already dead and gone. Yeah. But do you look to still those things? Like, how do you look to like a social media, TikTok, for example, and say, this is buzzy and it's not going to go away next week. It's going to still be buzzy 9 to 12 months from now.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned spicy because we did something over the summer so we partnered with Fly Beijing with their chili crisp topping. So to hit, to meet people in that moment. We called it Spice Cream. Yeah.
Nice. Classic. It was right there. You took it.
Because that's also not something that's new. We didn't invent that, right? Putting chili crisp on ice cream has been around for a long time. We just help amplify it I'd say we helped to highlight a partner that we were really excited to work with and show the good quality ingredients that they're using and putting them on our ice cream to kind of meet our customers. But I was saying, like, we're really aware of the trends, but not fully driven by them. Like, we want to be ahead of.
Right.
Like, where we want to live is before it hits the masses. Right? We want to be kind of driving the trend as opposed to just following. I think that's the thing Jeni said.
And I'd like to add a little bit to that. If you think of a typical innovation curve, a bell curve, when you're too far to the left before you start going up the bell curve, it's super niche, right? It's obscure. Restaurants don't often play there because you have to spend so much time, energy, and perhaps money if you're marketing it to explain what that thing is. And customers, not all, but some, have a negative reaction to something they've never tried before in some cases, right? So as you keep going up the bell curve, you've got kind of early adopters. At the peak, I say, is where trends are. And then as you go past the trend, it's really widely available, mass produced. Like you say, if we were to innovate right at the peak, at the trend, by the time we get it in, it's mass produced. We're not comfortable playing there. So our target is that early adopter, something that might be familiar. Maybe you haven't experienced it in combination the way we've put it together. So an example here would be, we had a sparkling cherry pie this summer. It was cherry pie, but it had Szechuan peppercorns in it. So maybe an unexpected element anchored in something familiar, or an unexpected ingredient that is, compelling or interesting to try. And so that's where we think we're kind of hitting right.
Yeah. Well, think about it through the lens of my 3 children who, two of whom are of ice cream eating age, and how much, they're not going to spring for ice cream. And in fact, I had your summer collection at home, and, a handful of the flavors they just devoured. A handful of them, they're like, Dad, you can have that one. But to that point, it seems like you guys do need to have something for everybody that you can have out there. But if every single flavor was out there, ice cream is so mainstream, you can't afford to lose that mainstream customer. Right?
Sorry, we kind of have 2 customers in mind when we're creating flavors for. We internally call one of them a tour guide. So these are adventure seekers, people who want to try something new. And they often are the person that is bringing their friends along because they found the next cool thing or something really interesting that they want to experiment with. And then it's the friend that's with a tour guide, right? That might be, a more suburban, maybe not as bold in their flavor choices. And both are really important. Our seasonal offerings or LTOs are typically about 20% of our mix. So about 80% is still our signature classics, but we enjoy having something new to talk about, and that gets about 20 to 30%, I would say, of the mix.
Sure. All right, let's talk about the holiday collection that's coming out. Starting developing this thing, you have a holiday collection last year, you come into this year's holiday collection, you've collected data, I'm sure, from how last year went. Do you bring flavors from last year with you, or old flavors too? How do you then look to bring in new flavors versus old?
Yeah, usually we take a couple of the previous holiday flavors that really popped off, and we'll bring those back, because I think the time of the year is really important. It's a nostalgic time of year.
Right?
And I think there are flavors that we've been joking that there are things that you could enjoy all year round, but for some reason we only have them at the holidays. It's like they stay special because we only have them that time of year. So we always look to bring a few flavors back from the collection before. White chocolate peppermint is a great example of something that's become kind of a holiday mainstay, where we could technically serve that all year round, but there's just something about November, December. It's like that's the thing we crave, and we want to hit that. So we'll bring a few back, and then we'll incorporate a few new.
Got it.
Have a good balance, I think, especially with holiday.
And it depends on what theme that we're trying to ladder up to. Do you want to talk about this year's collection?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's talk about this year's collection. We're going to eat this year's collection. We're going to do that after we. We'll talk about it.
I'm like,
we'll talk about it. Then we'll get ourselves hungry for it, and then we will eat it. Yeah.
Great. So this year's Splendid holiday, every holiday we call Splendid holiday. But this year we gave it a little bit more of a theme than we have in years past, and that is the theme of like a cookie tin. So if we think of holidays, like cookies are the currency of the season, right? It's the way that it's something that we gift to other people. It's the way that we show love, honestly, like with other people. It's pulling out Groom's recipe. It's baking with someone. It's, my friends, like, we always have big cookie swaps, and there are certain things I look forward to. So when we were thinking about just how do we want to approach holiday, it's really where our minds went. We're like, well, this is the way that you encapsulate the feeling of the season. So it's our version of a cookie tin. So if we were sitting and having a cookie swap, like, this is what we would bring and what we would want to share.
Yeah. Seems like do you have a cookie tin? It feels like you can present them in a cookie tin.
I mean, some of the photography actually has them.
Okay, I was going to say, that idea is for free. If you want to think about it.
I think that goes into like how we were thinking about e-com. This is a huge gifting season for us. So this year we actually have a box. We basically gift wrapped the box. So we have our signature Pantone 172 orange box that looks really great on your doorstep, and we gave it a green and orange stripe so it looks like it's been gift wrapped.
Cool.
Because it's kind of completing the story,
Yeah.
right? So if you get this in the mail, someone sends it to you, it's like getting a cookie tin in the mail, but it also now feels like it's been especially wrapped.
That's awesome. That's great. What are the new flavors this year that we're rolling out?
Sure. So we have ice molasses gingerbread, which is a molasses ice cream that we've spiced with allspice and ginger. There's gingerbread pieces in it, and then we actually have like a white icing kind of sauce, so it tastes like a molasses gingerbread cookie that's been glazed.
Yeah,
it's really awesome. Lemon crinkle, which is a like buttery lemon ice cream with a sweet cream swirl, so it's supposed to mimic that crackling on top, like that crinkle cookie. And then 7 layer bar, which is a toasted coconut caramel ice cream, chocolate sauce, and then a brown sugar oat.
What's your favorite of the holiday collection?
I think the lemon crinkle tea, but okay. I want something bright. I feel like that time of year, it's like everything is so decadent, and I love all of it.
Yeah.
But if I could have something a little bright in the mix, I also, one of the cookies I often bring to cookie swaps they're gingerbread, like ginger snacks there, but I make a lemon cream and I make little sandwich cookies. So I'm saying that.
So you just want them together?
I really just want. I want gingerbread and lemon crinkle together.
You can make that happen.
I know. That's the sneaky pairing.
Okay.
Because it has like all this spice and richness, and then you got a little like lemon pop. It's a really fun.
So scuba one, scuba the other. That ought to do the trick. Okay, Stacy, what's one of your favorites?
I am torn between pistachio, macaroon, which is a bring back flavor that's in this collection. Ours is, in my mind, the best pistachio ice cream on the market. What's remarkable about it is it has no cookie pieces, but it fully emulates the cookie. So we have a rich, kind of very deep, rich roasted pistachio that's ground into a nut butter. It's from our friends at Bear Nut Butter. And then we sweeten it with a little bit of honey. And it's just, and a little bit of almond essence, because almond and pistachio just combine to really enhance that nutty taste. So I love that one, but it's a classic. Of the new ones, I think 7 layer bar. I'm such a, one thing I love about a 7 layer bar is it's layered. So you get all these flavors in one bite, right? You get the chocolate and the caramel and the coconuts and and what am I forgetting? Chocolate, caramel, coconut, oat. The brown sugar oat. And to be able to replicate that in ice cream, where you get all of those flavors in one bite, you don't get to layer them in ice cream, right? And all these flavors can't just taste like mush. They have to hold it up. So I think it's pretty spectacular that we were able to replicate all of those flavors in one pint of ice cream.
It was smart that we talked about these beforehand, because I'm going to be so hungry for it. Okay, we're going to do it very soon, but lightning round really quick. All-time favorite flavor, Beth, starting with you.
Okay, current flavor is brown butter almond. Okay. That's a classic. Mm-hmm. But old school, because I was a tour guide. Like before, we made a flavor called backyard mint, and that's my favorite seasonal. Okay. But brown butter almond is just, it's everything.
Yeah, I've had that one. That's really good. All right, Stacy.
Mine's probably lemon and blueberry parfait. That flavor is so light. The texture, when I first had that, I realized how special Jeni's the product and the texture, how smooth it was, and how tart it was. And it's just got this great balance of crispy tart with sweet blueberry, and especially in winter, I really love that flavor. So,
You changed your answer. You remember your old answer? You told me this once. The bourbon.
oh, the eggnog.
The eggnog.
Well,
That's
it,
right.
it changes. Literally,
It
it
changes
changes
all the
based
time.
on what's in my freezer. Like, you know, I have no less than probably 15 pints at any time in my freezer, and the one I keep grabbing is the one that I answer.
Yeah.
Because the seasons change, and like her, I like brightness in the winter months.
Yeah.
Because citrusy, bright flavor.
You guys make it really hard too, because whenever I'm at Jeni's, I'm like, of course I could go with salted caramel.
Yeah.
I know what I'll love, but I want to try the other things too. So it's a hard decision, but that's hard in the best possible way.
We want you to try.
Yes. Yeah. So sampling everything is the key
That's
here.
right.
Last lightning round question. One ingredient you could never work in a Jeni's ice cream. And maybe one that you've tried and you've never been able to get it to work.
Okay, well, my initial reaction is like any kind of meat product. But then,
Well, sure.
Because we joke about it all the time. We're like, we're not putting bacon in ice cream. Like, we do.
I mean, maple bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next year.
But like figuring that out from the production side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my gut. It's just like I'm not
Anything meat related.
anything meat related. I don't know.
But you try. Have you tried bacon?
I've had it like on as like a topping.
You've never tried like next fall we're gonna do a smoky bacon something.
No, I mean, but we will play with like smoky things.
Yeah.
But I think the meat might be where I draw the line.
Okay.
I would have said fermented, but we did make our first fermented flavor this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So butterscotch brownie, and it's tremendous. I love the intersection between sweet and savory, and that one certainly does it in spades. So,
Okay.
so I can't. So now I have to take that off the list.
So I mean, what it means is literally everything could be a Jeni's flavor.
Everything's kind of on the table. Maybe outside for me. But everything that's on the table, as long as it's delicious.
That's what we
Okay.
That's the thing we're like.
That's a good
nothing is
filter.
off limits.
Yeah.
I want to go back for another bite. I want to sit down and eat a full thing of it. Okay, all right, we hit on something. But if that's not the reaction, then maybe it's not quite right.
So fortunately for me, unfortunately for anybody listening to this, we're now going to eat this ice cream, and I cannot share that experience. But Beth and Stacy, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for visiting.
That was my interview with Jeni's Stacy Peterson and Beth Stallings. A reminder, if you want to follow along with our ice cream sampling and get some more descriptions from Beth on this year's holiday flavors, go to NRN's Instagram at Nations Restaurant News. So what should you learn from the interview? Here are my 4 takeaways. My first takeaway is that seasonal menu innovation is a baked-in marketing strategy. Think about the holiday collection that Jeni's is releasing and how Stacy and Beth described it as a cookie tin. They said they were inspired by the cookie tin in developing these new flavors. That is such a cool story that they're telling with that, and that is such a great thing to be able to include in your marketing. Jeni's has done this now for several years, where they have built this reputation as being a ice cream concept that will do some out there flavors, that they'll take some chances with their flavor development and roll out some seasonal flavors that you didn't maybe expect, but you definitely find delicious. By doing this over the years, they have really set a customer expectation that Jeni's is the destination for interesting, adventurous flavors. And when you set that expectation, your customers have more reason to come into your scoop shops. Think about that customer who maybe only goes into Jeni's once a year. They don't find time to go get ice cream. Well, suddenly when you have 4, 5, 6 seasons throughout the year where you have another excuse to go try some flavors, and it gets you to come in more frequently because you want to try those flavors, that's marketing. It's a great marketing strategy. Now, it's not for everybody. Think of the bell curve that Stacy was describing in this interview. And you have, on one side of that bell curve, you have sort of mass adoption, mainstream flavors, certainly where a lot of the bigger chains play and certainly where a lot of QSR plays. You have the other side of that spectrum where maybe it's a little bit more fine dining, maybe a little bit more out there, crazy flavor development, maybe high end, not trendy flavors. But somewhere in the middle, that's where, Jeni's is certainly operating a little bit to the side of center, right? Jeni's wants to be where it's not totally trendy yet, but the flavor is on the up, and customers can be interested in seeing what that flavor is all about. And Jeni's can be one of the first to get out there with that flavor. Now, when you occupy that spectrum, depending on where your restaurant lies, it can become, your menu R&D can become such a great marketing tool in that toolbox that you have, because again, it gives customers reason to come in, try your menu, see what you're doing. And then to do it seasonally means you have an expectation that several times a year there's going to be something else there that you haven't tried before, but you want to go in and give it a try. Last thing I'll say about this too is that Jeni's has license now to take some big swings with their flavor development. Because it's seasonal, because these flavors are only out there for a couple of months at a time, they can be a little bit more creative than they might otherwise have been if these flavors were going to hang around for a while. If they really needed these flavors to do well with sales for on the long term, you got to be a little bit more safe with that flavor development. But because they rotate so many of these flavors seasonally, they're able to take those big swings, take some chances, and a lot of those swings connect. My second takeaway is that timing is everything in menu R&D. Of course, it takes a long time to develop new products, but remember, it takes time to scale new products. Beth and Stacy did a great job explaining the process by which they develop new flavors for the seasonal rotations. They said they're working 9 to 12 months in advance on these new flavors because, of course, first you have to iterate. They said they're working with about 30 or 40 different options with every season before they winnow that down to the 5 or 6 that get rolled out to scoop shops. So first you start with that iterating, you try all these new things, and then you see what sticks. Well, then you have to figure out, do we have the supply available for these ingredients? When is that supply going to be available? Is it ready now, or is it going to be ready next year when we roll this out to scoop shops? You have to scale this with the the systems you have in place for manufacturing and actually getting the product to the scoop shops. This is not an unfamiliar process, probably to most of you, that process of R&D. But if you're going to be so invested in it that you're trying new flavors and ingredients all the time, you're doing this seasonally, just remember the time that it takes to plan and having to get these things all timed at the right time so that supply, manufacturing, delivery, all of that stuff is happening in concert with each other to make sure those new flavors hit the shelves, so to speak, exactly when they need to. My third takeaway is that food is closely linked to memory and it has the ability to transport guests. So going back to this idea that food is telling a story, we also talked about it last week when Nick Jammett from Sweetgreen and I spoke about Sweetgreen's seasonal menu development and the story that Sweetgreen is able to tell with its menu. Jeni's is doing the same thing. And I love this idea that Beth brought up, that food is closely linked to memory. So when you take a bite of your favorite food, it is transporting you to all of those other moments before when you had that. When I go home and I eat my mom's cooking, it reminds me of being a kid and eating my mom's cooking as a kid, right? Or grandma's cooking, whatever it is for you, you have memories closely linked to food. Jeni's is trying to evoke those memories with its flavor development. I think it's so interesting and appropriate that Beth is a former food journalist. So she used to write stories with words. Now she's writing stories with ice cream. I find that so fascinating. I'm a little biased as a food journalist, of course. And don't worry, no, I am not going to become the head of R&D for anybody. But she's such a master storyteller, and she is telling those stories through ice cream by evoking those memories. It's such a cool way to consider food, and I would challenge you to think about that as well. How can you develop new flavors that evoke emotion and memory from your guests? They're already halfway there. They already have that memory of the flavors they've had as children, as they're growing up. They have that nostalgia. You just have to tap into it with those flavors you offer. Seasons are the perfect chance to do that. The holidays, we have such great memories, by and large, hopefully, of holidays, of time spent with family. And those memories are right there for you to tap into with the right flavor combinations. My fourth and final takeaway is that you should think both big and small with your new product development. So Stacy said they have no restrictions to where they pull inspiration from for new flavors, which is great. She says they're looking at flavors from other galaxies and, obviously starting really, really big when it comes to thinking of what those new flavors can be. But she also pointed out that they're thinking about developing flavors really for two types of audiences. She said they have two types of customers. They have the tour guide, what she calls the tour guide. That's somebody who's a little bit more adventurous and wanting to try some of these new creative flavors. Then you have the tour guide's friend, the person who wants to come in and have just that signature classic flavor, something that makes them happy. It's something that's just indulgent. And then, the other thing for Jeni's that's unique, that perhaps not all of you have this, they also have to consider that they have the scoop shop customer and they have their CPG customer. Jeni's has a presence in retail stores all around the country. And so when they're developing for retail and for the freezers in groceries, for example, you have to think a lot more mainstream, because you have to think about moving product off the shelves to that mainstream customer who's walking by the freezer and, just had an impulse buy for some ice cream. And why I say you have to think big and small is because at the end of the day, your bigger share of product is going to be that more mainstream customer, the tour guide's friend, the person looking for that safe bet off the menu, something that just makes them happy and is craveable. But you have to think small, because you have that smaller audience of people who want that new adventure in flavor. They want that story to be told to them. They want to try outside the box ideas. And you have to make the flavors for them as well. You have to develop new ideas for them as well. Stacy said at Jeni's, it's about an 80-20 split. About 20% of customers get the signature flavors. About 80% get the signature flavors. About 20% get the seasonal flavors. So that's why I say you've got to think big and you have to think small. Think big in terms of what's the mass adoption, big mainstream, delicious flavor expectation that customers, know what they're going to get. What's that small niche creative product that can hook your customers, that can be part of your marketing strategy, that can get those adventurous palates in your doors. Think about both of those things, and you'll be able to land on a balance in your R&D that, again, does that storytelling, that marketing for you. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.
Unlike CMMS and vendor marketplaces, 86 Repairs doesn't profit from service companies and has only comprehensive, unbiased market insights in the industry. Designed to help operators reduce cost, minimize equipment downtime, and work with the best service companies, 86 Repairs ensures staff can stay focused on what matters, serving their guests. Learn more at 86repairs.com.